All right, guys, we are back again with COVID Cabal. We are back with fucking COVID Cabal. How long has this been? I gotta see if I can see the chat here because I would love to have a chat. All right. I see the chat. Let's fucking go. Let's fucking go. We're getting the fucking gang back together, guys. We're getting the gang back together. Are you guys seeing what I'm wearing right now? Are you guys seeing this? Are you guys fucking seeing the Christmas sweater? The infamous Christmas sweater from January 6, 2021. I mean, we are so back that I don't even know. I don't think we've ever been this back before. So I debated this with the wine intro. I debated it, okay? Because I'm not drinking. I haven't been drinking since the holidays. Um, cut back on a lot of drinking. Look, we had a fun time in 2020 with all that drinking, right? We had a fun time with all that wine, with all that crazy conspiracy talk, which is now all fucking true. We're gonna be talking about that a lot over the next hour. Um, but man, I was doing like COVID Cabal, in between COVID Cabal and my other show, I was doing that was just so much wine. That was so much wine. It was bad. I was stressed. I can look back. I can see definitely was stressed about things. Go figure, right? Um, Fortunately, I had a family of wine drinkers, so it's not like I was doing it all myself. But you're still drinking a lot then. So I debated. I'm like, man, I don't really do that stuff anymore. I don't drink. Like, I've been not drinking for since like early January. But it's COVID Cabal, so I got some. I busted some out. It's COVID Cabal, so I had to bust some out. I was just thinking to myself, like, if you really want to do this, if you really want to bring back COVID Cabal, you got to bring it all back. And everybody's telling me, they're like, like Will, my business manager, he wasn't saying like you should be drinking, but he was saying like, man, like just from like a marketing perspective, the whole wine thing in the beginning was really like mimetic. It's like people have with the show, they have something that they do that like makes it distinct. I was doing the wine thing because I like wine, I know about wine. Um and yeah, it was catchy. It was catchy. So I don't know, maybe I'll have to become an alcoholic if I want to be successful. Or, but here's the realistic thing, guys. We're just not going to be doing COVID Cabal all the time, okay? Because right now we're just winning so much. I think highest frequency we're going to be getting with COVID Cabal is like once a week, and probably it's more likely less than that. We're going to save this stuff for special occasions. We're going to save it for some special occasions. But anyway, enough of this intro. Let's get at the real intro, which is the wine. So the wine I have today is a Rosé Carneros. Now, and I have this beautiful gold rimmed goblet. I'm pretty sure I got for $1 at some antique store in the middle of bumfuck South Jersey. So, but it's kind of cool, right? It's got this little glamour to it. Look at that. It's a chalice. It's a chalice for a king. So, yeah, White Hoodie's gonna come back. White Hoodie's in storage. White Hoodie will come back in the summer season. Because it's just not an appropriate winter hoodie. So Carneros, okay, let's talk about the wine a little bit. Carneros. So this is a rosé, so that means for sure it's Pinot Noir, right? Carneros is where California makes their elite sparkling wine, and like most sparkling wine regions that are trying to mimic the style of these fucking socks off. Like most sparkling wine regions that try to mimic the style of champagne, Carneros mostly uses Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, the two primary champagne varietals as well. So, what makes Carneros interesting? So, if you go and you look at the Napa Valley, and I do not have my wine books in front of me, although they're not that far away. Should I get them? Should I get my wine book? Should I point it out on the map, or do you guys just want to take my word from it? Let's see what you guys say in the chat. Let's see if maybe I can bust it out. But I know about Carneros from memory. So if you look at a map, all you have to do. All right, fine. I'm gonna get the fucking book. You guys want the whole thing. You guys have been starved for 4 years. Let me see here. This is all organized pretty well. Wait a minute. The atlas is not here. Oh, that's strange. Okay, I don't know where the atlas is. I have the encyclopedia. I'm gonna have to pass. I'll find it for the next show. I don't know what happened to it. Must have got like thrown out someplace. But I'm gonna make this like super easy for you guys to understand. So you look at the San Francisco Bay on the map. The San Francisco Bay on the map. Just north of that is Napa Valley, and so Napa has there's a whole range of stuff with Napa. Eventually, the Napa Ridge collides with the sort of coastal ridge, let's say, in California. When you get to like the middle part of Napa, that's where the most desirable wine regions in Napa are. So that's like where you have like Rutherford, Stag's Leap, and the reason for that is because what makes Napa a good growing region is that you have the coolness from the San Francisco Bay creates a fog that goes up the valley. And so what you want is you want cool temperatures and moisture for grapes, but you also want a lot of sunlight and you don't want them to become soaked. So the middle of the Napa Valley is most appealing because it's still getting morning fog, but it's getting midday, it's getting sun throughout most of the day. When you go to the top of Napa Valley, it's less desirable because it doesn't get much fog, so it's not as much moisture and coolness. At the very bottom of Napa is Carneros. And so all that extra fog essentially means it's a cooler growing climate. So you'll also see the types of grapes used in Napa will change a little bit. I mean, you're still going to have Cabernet used at the very, very top. But at the bottom, you can't really grow Cabernet. It's too cold. So that's why you have, just like in the Champagne region is a very marginal growing region. Actually, Champagne is so cold, you can't grow grapes for still wine in Champagne. At some point in history, you could, during the medieval warm period, because the climate actually has changed a lot over time. It used to be warmer before it got colder now. But so Champagne, it can't grow wine to full maturity. That's why it only makes sparkling wines. Sparkling wines don't need full maturity. So Carneros is very similar. So anyway, we got a Carneros here. And for you guys interested in getting American sparkling wine, Carneros is probably your highest quality you're gonna get. That's the typical thing. So let's try this. Cheers. Yeah, Biden took my Atlas. Oh man, that's good. Yeah, that's good. Woo, that's good. That's good. Been a few weeks. Okay, so let's talk about some of this winning here. Um, I know that we did COVID Cabal after Periscope went down. Um, I think Periscope shut down in like early mid March. So after my arrest, we had a few little Periscopes. They kind of felt like goodbye Periscopes though. Um, and then I did some stuff on Twitch, and that was fine. That was fun. Kind of kept like a little bridge for the community. But I think we can all like agree, right? We can all agree that when I had that last Periscope on the day of Biden's inauguration. Like that was called goodbye, and it really, like, for a lot of sense and purposes, was. I mean, it was, in some sense, an understanding that last 9 months, guys, we've been fighting. The last 10 months, we're fighting. We've been fighting, trying to raise awareness, show people what's been going on, fight against the stolen election. Hope that Trump is not going to let them take power, destroy this country. And it was almost a concession, like, fuck. They just took the country. They just took the presidency. It's gonna get bad. That's what it was. It was a concession like that. And we didn't know what was gonna happen. A lot of you guys know, a lot of you guys remember that I was I told the FBI to fuck themselves. Fuck yourself, come find me. Well, they did find me. They picked me up the next morning. And so for 4 years straight, I want you guys to put this in perspective. Every single day of the Biden administration, I was under attack. I was either in prison or I was under some form of supervision, whether it was pretrial supervision or whether it was, supervised release, probation afterwards, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. It was 4 years straight, literally to the day, and in the same sort of sense that at that Biden's first day in office, he signs my arrest warrant, and I'm arrested early the next morning. Late on Trump's first day in office, I'm pardoned. It's pretty surreal. It's pretty crazy. It's like it's almost an exact 4-year cycle. So I knew, and I could tell just from the stuff outside after Trump's election, that we were going to be dealing with a different administration. Um, but guys, I think everybody is surprised at just how quickly and effectively they have been dismantling the deep state. Uncle Guns, what's up, my man? Thank you for the comment. Thank you for the like and subscribe. This is the first COVID Cabal on YouTube as well, by the way. So if you're watching on YouTube, you have no idea what's going on. You have no idea, but you're about to find out. So, I mean, what's crazy about this is it's been like a 4-year pause, not just for COVID Cabal, but for the plan, for all us plan trusters. And honestly, it's becoming really hard to deny that there's something going on here. I mean, we just had all the timing off, um, which is of course understandable, but it is all happening. And this U.S. aid stuff is so crucial, and I think it's just like the tip of the iceberg. Like, we've known about. I think it's going to. You're going to end up seeing some Republicans and really almost the entire Democratic Party essentially involved in, like, RICO conspiracy. And so when I say that there's not going to be a Democratic Party, one that's recognizable at least, by 2028, this is what I mean. I mean, people are going to go to prison. There are going to be a lot of people going to prison, and there are going to be executions. One of Trump's first executive orders, one of the 100 he signed, was to have executions for treason. I mean, you're not doing that unless you know what's coming. And you can start to see now how their entire movement is just completely fragmenting. I have never seen consensus bleed from any sort of political party like it's bleeding right now. It's like they've been, like, shot in the gut with a shotgun, and they're just bleeding out all over the floor. Support is cratering, and it's at like 31% now, and it's going to keep going down. And this is what I think is where things are going. I'm mostly concerned about the extreme elements of the left becoming terroristic in nature because they're basically becoming cornered and cut off from everything. I mean, this entire time we thought that Soros and people were funding them, and we knew that they were using black ops and stuff to get funding, and that they manipulate the market to get funding. But what's crazy, I think, about all of this is to learn and understand that we are we were actually paying for it. And I think I speak for most of us when I say that it was a lot worse than I could have ever imagined. I mean, I knew that they were sending money to stupid projects, and I knew that DC was benefiting from corruption and lobbyist money. I mean, there's a reason that 7 of the 10 fastest growing counties in the United States were all the counties around DC. But this is a different level. This is a completely different level. It's basically making the entire Democratic Party look like it was just one big scam. That's all it was. And I've always said that the blue states aren't as blue. The blue states aren't really that blue. It's manipulation, it's propaganda, it's it's vote tampering. So in some sense I feel vindicated by all this stuff because I think people are starting to realize that maybe these states have been captured for a really long time because the federal stuff we're seeing is just the tip of the iceberg, right? We know it's also happening in states, especially blue states. Although, there's stuff going on in Texas, right? I actually think that the most clean state in this country is Florida. Um, you can tell Florida, like, you look at how effective Trump is, how effective, like, we're 2.5 weeks in, just the absolute, like, elimination of rot, um, how everything is so targeted and decisive. I think we have to give credit to Florida here because Florida is the only state that, like, a lot of this stuff are things that you saw at Florida, not even to this extent, but you saw a lot of it. Like DeSantis has been a really great governor. I think whatever issues we have with him in the past, he has certainly redeemed himself. I don't know what his political future is going to look like, but he's been a phenomenal governor. Um, you can't look at Texas and you can't say Texas is not nearly. Texas got stuff going on. Texas got a lot of dirt going on, and I'm going to tell you part of the dirt that's going on that we are going to see in the coming months, and this is why the cartel stuff is so important, is that the cartels have bought most of the governments, especially in the Southwest United States. A lot of these cities, a lot of these towns are owned by the cartels. All the election fraud stuff you saw in Arizona, you're going to find that this stuff is going to trace back to cartel activity. I'm telling you guys this ahead of time. It's going to trace back to cartel activity. There is a lot of really, really rough stuff going on in the Southwest of the country. And I think Texas has also experienced some of that because obviously Texas, is on the border. So we're going to see, but we know that this is just the beginning. I mean, USAID is really it's just started. I mean, we're 2.5 weeks in, and look at what they've uncovered. Um, and Ed Martin, I mean, I love Cash Patel. I'm looking forward to Cash Patel getting in, but I mean, Ed Martin's been great acting. Sorry, I'm mixing this up. We definitely need Cash Patel because it's FBI. Ed Martin is acting attorney general, and Pam Bondi's in that now, so I guess he's her lieutenant. He's phenomenal. He's phenomenal, and I mean, look, I'm not gonna say I didn't feel like it was gonna happen for me at some point, but he's talking publicly about reparations for January Sixers. So that would be cool. I mean, I'm not trying to be like petty here, but I really hope that like legal fee compensation comes as part of that because I mean, if I get like a settlement without a legal fee compensation, like legal fees are going to eat like half that settlement. So, I shouldn't get penalized because I didn't use a public defender. Let me hit some of these comments for a section before I keep going. Scattering like roaches with the lights on. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Guns. Problem is the continuation of real Dem plan, wealthy Dems moving the red states, bringing business ideologies, influencing others to vote blue, turn those states purple. Well, I don't think that they're really that effective at this anymore, Uncle Guns. And I think that part of also what we're seeing is so much of what they've been doing is really using taxpayer money to do these initiatives. They don't actually have a lot of money on their own. The black ops and stuff can't fund all the subversion. They've been literally just taking it from the public purse and laundering it, paying their activists to do all this stuff. So the fact that Doge is clearing this stuff out, I think is going to clear a lot of it. But I'll also say this, and I've been trying to emphasize this because it's like I'm not trying to be mean about it to people, but we have to think more like critically about the movements of people from blue states to red states. You know, there was a lot of talk, and I know this isn't exactly what you're saying, Guns, because you're talking about, you know, specifically wealthy individuals. But there's been all this talk about like, oh, like look at all these people leaving California, they're moving to Texas. You know, people from New York moving to Florida, they're going to turn those states blue. Well, the opposite happened, right? Who was leaving the blue states? Conservatives were leaving for the blue states. They were leaving for Florida. Florida's become blood red. For all the Democrats talk about Texas turning, you know, purple, being a purple state, it's also shifted red. But actually the real impact of people leaving, the conservatives leaving these blue states, the flight from the blue states has been helping to keep those states blue. I mean, I've been saying this for a while. New Jersey is not a fucking blue state. It's not. It's not a blue state. I live here. I live in a blue town. This is not a blue state. Like even as I walk around now, I mean, especially not now. I walk around, there's Trump stuff all over the place. And the second you leave this area, it's like everywhere you go. Like people in the Northeast, I'm not gonna talk about New England. New England's a little more complicated story. But when you're talking about mid-Atlantic, you're talking about New Jersey, New York. I'm sorry, but the ethos of this area is go fuck yourself. That's the ethos of it. Trump comes from this area. This is a really combative, it's a heavy Italian immigrant, and the Italian immigrants have a very hyper patriotic, hyper combative disposition. They hate bullshit. They're all about, you know, they're naturally populists because they're naturally about family and tradition. It's a really interesting sociological study, by the way, because I would love someone to look at it because Italian Americans, I think, are probably the best assimilation case in American history because they and they're a really interesting version too because they keep so much of their like Italian heritage and nature. They're very distinct, but they are like American obsessed. It's fascinating. It's really fascinating. It's very much like the Borderlanders, the Scots Irish as they're often called, who you know still keep in many senses that they have that sort of like libertarian sort of nobody messes with me kind of mentality. Um, I'm really interested in that kind of study. I'm really interested in that study because if you read the book Albion Seed and you see the nature of how the Borderlanders were formed, I think that there's a lot of similarities to like the predominantly Southern Italian immigrants. But I don't want to digress too much on that stuff, guys. You know, Cabal, we digress. We like to digress here and there. We like to digress. So look, these states are going to be turning red if they weren't red already. I really believe that New Jersey only is still blue because of the combination of federal USAID like activist funding, and of course, it's happening on a state level too. And the fact that a lot of conservatives were moving to Florida. Like I can tell you, for instance, I may have mentioned this on one of those other COVID cabals, but in the 2021 gubernatorial elections in New Jersey, Burlington County and Bergen County were both flipped in the middle of the night from red to blue. They kept Andy Kim's seat because Andy Kim, and by the way, Andy Kim, if you're watching this, which I know you're not yet, fuck you. Go fuck yourself, Andy Kim. I maybe I'm gonna run against Andy Kim. I might run against Andy Kim at some point because this guy's a clown. He just got the Senate seat, right? Andy Kim donated his suit that he wore on January 6, 2021 to the Smithsonian. The suit where he shit his pants in, suit with big shit smears all down his fucking britches. He donated that to the Smithsonian. So, I might run against Andy Kim. I think it'd be a good contrast to have that little bitch and me. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Maybe down the line I'll do that. Maybe down the line I'll do that. If Andy Kim's still around. But anyway, they did that in 2021 to keep Andy Kim's seat, because that's predominantly his district, Burlington County. Obviously the congressional districts aren't exactly counties, but they overlap. So, point is that this is a very corrupt state. Everyone's known that. I mean, New Jersey's got a lot of mafia influence. A lot of the mafias are involved. But there's a good point to that because you could start to see faster flipping going on over here. So, let's see. Let me check some more of these comments here. I want to keep you guys going. Keep myself going here too, my man. Pour myself another glass of this Carneros. Yeah, well, okay, so let's talk about this. Like, what fascinates is seeing the people who are still brainwashed by the propaganda. They literally cannot see the fraud in front of them. Well, look, there. I'm trying to think of how to say this in a nice way. I want to be nice. I want to be a kind person. I don't want to be don't want to be nasty. I don't want to be like I was before. I got a little bit too acerbic, I think is the term. But the left is like a Borg mind. I mean, I really don't know how else to say it. I was talking to a friend about this earlier today, actually, and he received like 2 messages from some really liberal friends that were basically like, I'm cutting you off. This is over kind of messages. And they both used the same words in it. And we were talking about this because this is stuff we noticed in the past, which is, and I'm not saying that, look, I'm not trying to claim that, I've never made comments that I've seen other people make before, that I haven't integrated statements other people made into my own sort of arguments or lexicon. Okay. I'm not trying to pretend that like I am immune to mimetic influence, but there's something a little bit different here because I'm not like, oh yeah, the way that person said it, I like what they said. I'm going to integrate that into how I describe things. It's more of like a mindlessness. It's more of like, when people show that NPC meme and you have everybody, commenting the exact same phrase, it is very much like a hive mind. And if you actually do like esoteric study, and what I mean by that is like understanding how the left-hand path, the dark forces, etc., work, it actually does operate like a hive mind. And look, each to their own, but I would say at this point, if you don't believe in some degree of like divine providence and divine intervention, I would really encourage you to reassess that because they had everything lined up to kill Trump. They did. They had it all lined up. I think we all knew they were going to try to assassinate him. But there was nothing in that plan that should have indicated it was going to fail. You know what I mean? They had everything in position. They gave the perfect window for the shot. It was an easy shot, and the guy missed. Why did he miss? What happened? You get to a certain point and you realize that they're not allowed to go there. Evil's been allowed to expose itself. I mean, I consider what I'm proud of from what I've gone through. What I'm proud of is the fact that, and some people might not give us enough credit yet, but really it was the persecution of the January Sixers that pulled the mask off the Biden regime in the left in general. It was their ultimate overreach. And this overreach is important because when you overreach, you expose yourself. The left thrives on illusion. And the strongest illusion that they had, it's the reason that they've had cultural dominance for the past 50, 60 years, is they've had the illusion of morality. And the simple fact is, when they turned, let's even put aside the fact that they set up January 6th, that the police instigated the entire violence. Let's just put aside all this stuff for a second, okay? Put it aside. Let's accept a more mainstream framing at this point that we got out of hand and that we weren't really doesn't matter. We just got out of hand. It was our fault. Even if you accept that argument, the bottom line is they went way too far going after us. Because at the end of the day, it was, if it was a riot, like it was a bunch of little low grade scuffles. I mean, they like one of their officers shot and killed like a 5 foot tall woman. Didn't give her any warning, just fucking shot her in the neck. And they let another woman, Rosalind Boyan, get trampled. Okay, so what happened with us? Okay, yeah, some cops did get roughed up. Sometimes, if in that particular incident it wasn't maybe justified. In other cases, it certainly was. But the bottom line is like whatever. Like it's a rowdy demonstration. Was that worth having 40% minimum of the FBI resources for 4 years go after us? If they had like, and this shows the sort of arrogance and the tunnel vision that happens when you choose like an evil path, because strategically the smart decision would be to have all this, narrative attack on January 6th, but to then have been reasonable, to then have just like hit us with basic misdemeanors, and they could use us as this negative example, but make themselves maintain this moral high ground. But they didn't do it. They tried to like, create a felony to go after us. I mean, we were bait. And this is the funny thing about January 6th is that they baited us to go into the building. So we went in, we overextended. But then we caused them to overextend in a way that caused strategic defeat. Because I can tell you this, even a lot of like liberals started to have a serious problem with the degree to which they were going after us. I mean, when I had to go back to DC in December to face resentencing because the prosecution was trying to resentence me consecutively to my misdemeanors after my felony had been vacated so that I could still be in prison, even my most liberal family members were like, this is out of control. Because it is out of control. It's completely out of control. But they were able to do all sorts of things that didn't make sense because they had moral superiority. I'm going to use analogy with women for you guys to give you an idea about it. Because, let's say you're dating a woman and she's borderline, because that's really what the left is. You're dealing with a borderline personality disorder woman. She's crazy. She's up and down, all sorts of fucking nonsense all the time. But part of how she's able to do this is she makes you feel bad about yourself. She makes you feel like you're a bad person because you didn't cater to her completely neurotic emotional need. Okay. And a lot of guys can, if they lack discernment, they lack boundaries, but they have a good heart, they can get manipulated by that. But when that woman who's trying to make you feel bad about yourself, you find out that she's been like cheating on you, she's been like fucking a lot of guys on the side. She's got no moral credibility anymore. Everything that she says, all of her outbursts are like, "Go fuck yourself, bitch." Like you are done. Get out of my life, get out of my face. And that's what's happened with the left now, is that we've tolerated incredible abuse and gaslighting and manipulation simply because they were able to still maintain this frame that they were the good people. They may have been crazy, they may have been unreasonable, like a woman, like a hysterical woman. I'm not trying to say that every woman is like this all the time, okay? But they trying to be politically correct here, but like they're bad people. Like DC's been looting the country. Like you have all these people, these commentators, and we always wondered like who's listening to this stuff. No one cares about this. You can't meet a person who actually takes this stuff seriously, who actually believes them. That was it. They were stealing. They're pieces of shit. Without their moral superiority, it's over. But yeah, I think that there's a Borg mind going on. And you think about this. You think about people who really bought into the vax. You think about people who built their entire sense of self on their goodness. And they didn't just like casually do it, because a lot of the people who casually agreed with leftist principles have jumped off the bandwagon. We're talking about the people who cut people out of their life for it, who really, really doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down on everything. Now they're in a position where, like, for them to retreat, every step they took forward makes a retreat backwards to humility harder to do. So a lot of them, I mean, I'm just seeing this myself. A lot of them are really miserable, and to some extent, I do feel bad for them, because I mean, I do and I don't. I say this on two different levels, right? Like, I, as a human basis, because I'm actually empathetic. I'm actually empathetic. I see what they're going through, and I hate to see it. On the other hand, you reap what you sow. For instance, my prosecutor, um, I think a lot of J6ers had really bad prosecutors. Prosecutors who delighted in the abuse. My prosecutor didn't delight in the abuse. My prosecutor, it hurt him spiritually. You could see it. He didn't. He was never. He could have done worse. Let's put it that way. He wanted. I don't think he wanted to be a part of it. He told my lawyer he didn't want to be a part of it. He ended up moving to prosecuting sex trafficking cases. He had a hard time with what he had to do. But that's the thing, he didn't have to do it. And this is what I mean. So like on a human basis, like I forgive my prosecutor, the main prosecutor. I forgive him. I don't have any hatred towards him. But does he not deserve to get fired? Like he did? I'm pretty sure he got fired. I haven't 100% checked this. Does he not deserve it? No, he deserves it. I'm not going to step in the way of him in justice. I don't have to add my weight to it. You understand what I'm saying? I don't have to add my weight to the comeuppance. I don't have to. I don't want to push the pendulum further than it has to go. But it's gonna go where it's gonna go anyway. That you reap what you sow, and that's how I feel about a lot of. And I'm sure maybe some of them felt that way about me. You know what I mean? They didn't like to see it happen to me, but they thought maybe I, on some level, had earned it, and maybe I did, but not in the way that they thought. I earned it because I was asking for a fight with the federal government, but I wasn't fighting with a just institution. You understand? So I think a lot of these people are gonna have some hard times, and I don't like to see them go through hard times, because they're not the communists. They're just really stuck in this brainwash cycle, and they're hurting because of it. They're hurting because of it. I'm not going to add to their hurt. But the only way out is to come to humility. The thing about us is that The second that you say, you know what, I was really wrong. I was wrong. This was all wrong. I'm sorry. As long as you're not trying to be like a leader of the movement all of a sudden, like we're gonna welcome you with open arms. I'm gonna welcome you with open arms. I'm not gonna look at you and be like, yeah, I'm gonna listen to what your opinion is about what we should do now. I'm not gonna do that. But if you're ready to come and that's the only way out of this. It's the only way out. It's the only way out of anything you have in life. Any kind of like problem or issue you have, if you can't come to integrity, you're never gonna feel good. It's just the way it is. So I'm gonna keep looking down here. California is definitely not blue. Um, I think there's a lot of like the San Fran area is, but Southern California is 100% not blue. Um, and since these fires, I think it's not even going to be a question anymore. Uh, better offers. You're so you say so. I know this is Cabal, but wondering if you could touch on how to properly introduce a girl to this truth who isn't a crazy feminist, just naturally follows the propaganda because she doesn't have to otherwise. The what I just say in general is that like I don't think I have enough context here to understand. So you're just saying she's liberal, basically. Clarify in the comments. Where have I been? I've been in prison. Tyzilla. I've been in prison. I've been out of prison. I've been out of prison for 3 and change months, but that was something else, wasn't it? All right, let's see here. A federal judge just limited Doge's access to sensitive Treasury Department payment systems. What are they hiding? Well, I got to talk about this, okay? So let's talk about the judiciary here. This is important. The judiciary. So most of these judges are not sticking their neck out for the left at this point in time because they're just true believers. Maybe a handful, but to be honest, I'm pretty much at this point that the true believers are mostly just people who are grunts. It's like stupid people. If you've gained any position of power or influence, if you become a federal judge, and I'll tell you, federal judges, some are stupid, but a lot of them are not stupid. A lot of them are really not stupid. They lack integrity, but they're not stupid. I think a lot of these judges are in on it. I mean, my judge, Howell, there were a lot of allegations that she was involved in communications with the Justice Department, which of course you are absolutely unable to do as a judge. You're supposed to be independent from the Justice Department. Elise Stefanik brought that stuff up. She was my judge was brought up on, not only just she was brought up on 2 impeachment things, both for that and for bias. And I can vouch personally for both of those things because of my sentencing hearing. She was talking about the fact, like, that I listen to Fox News. Like, Fox News is the most mainstream news channel in America. You're going to say that because I listen to Fox News that, like, I'm a radical for that? I mean, that shows your bias, right? And beyond this, she was really adamant at my trial to the prosecutor. Does the Department of Justice have any information about the people that Mr. Stedman went into the Capitol with? And my prosecutor was like very sheepishly like, "Oh, we can't comment on that." Well, yeah, you can't comment on that. That has no basis whatsoever as a point of inquiry in a trial. How is the judge asking the Justice Department what the status is of prosecuting people who may have been with me? She is not supposed to even ask that question. If she felt bold enough to ask that question in the courtroom, you don't think that she's not going to call somebody up? She was Chief Justice of the District Court up until May 2023. And there's articles about this. She had secret hearings with Merrick Garland, the Attorney General. So the point of this stuff is that's just one example with January 6th, but this judiciary is really corrupted. It's really corrupted. I personally think the way to deal with DC is to just disband the entire district altogether, because I think the entire district is rotten to its core. And why should DC even have a separate district? It doesn't need it. It doesn't need it. That's easier to do than actually removing judges. To remove a judge in the Constitution, you need 2/3 in the Senate after a majority impeachment in the House. But you just simply need a majority in both branches of Congress to remove a district of the courts. Because the only we talk about how the judiciary is independent from, it's an independent branch of government, and that's true. But in the Constitution, the only court that is independent from, how do I put this? How to say this properly? The Supreme Court is created in the Constitution. All the other courts are, and this is per the Constitution, created by acts of Congress, right? So acts of Congress created the appellate circuit, and acts of Congress created the districts, right? The district circuit. So Congress, the judiciary in the District of Columbia only exists because of an act of Congress. Congress could say we're going to get rid of the DC district, all the judges lose their jobs. Easy way to deal with it. But I actually think there needs to start to be indictments, because I guarantee you that the judiciary is connected to all this stuff. A lot of these judges, the way they're behaving not simply like partisans, but they're behaving like people who are under personal threat. Great Alexander, they have a powerful egregore, 100%. Euro peeps can only look at the US now and envy, but glad there's a beacon of light in the world, the USA. Well, here's the funny thing, Romeo, is that they use the US as a, how do I put this? They use the US to be the muscle for the global empire. And so they basically made all the other Western countries vassal states of the USA. It's kind of like an ironic turn of events, because now the US frees itself from control from this global cabal. In all these other countries, they're retreated to every other Western country right now, right? They've retreated. The only country that was never under their control was Hungary, but Hungary was still like barely surviving in that position, because how can you be a vassal state and maintain a true independence? It's difficult. Hungary had a hard time. So, in the same light, how can a vassal state maintain anti-American opposition when they're a vassal? These countries, in order to pursue their own agendas, were basically using the America for everything. And now these countries are finding they have no sovereignty. And that's why Trump can walk around and throw his dick on the table, and people have to, you know what? I don't want to be crass. I don't want to be crass here. People have to, you know what? Let's see here. Yeah, the shot heard around the world. Well, better offers. I'll just say this with your girl. You could, I would ask you to DM me, send me a message. But I'd just say this, that I don't think that you just DM me about it. DM me about it, because like, I don't want you to just be like a political guy, but at the same time, like, why especially at this point in time, like, why are you gonna try to pretend that anything she's saying makes any sense? There's ways for you to seed commentary about political things without being explicitly political. Talking about like issues in the culture you see. I think if you remove Trump from the equation, you can start to gain a lot of headway. Let's see here. Property Prince is in here. I love it. How do I think he's going to deal with the EU? I think that the EU is going to start to fall apart. I think the EU is going to start to fall apart. You can see already USAID was bankrolling a lot of the subversive activities across Europe. So when you have, over the coming weeks and months, as this funding dries up, and now that we control the social media platforms, I just don't think these governments are going to survive. I doubt we're going to have any kind of overt military action, but it's a matter of rapidly shifting the consciousness in these countries so that they overthrow their own governments. And I got to be honest, guys, I think this is an inevitability. I really am not concerned about what's going to happen in Western countries. I think that there's a fight ahead in a lot of these Western European countries, but you're going to see it. You're going to see repatriation. You're going to see remigration, especially because now, like, the USAID stuff is helping this even further because we're starting to see that a lot of these movements to move migrants in the countries in the first place were done through subversive activities. And yeah, a lot of migrants are going to suffer from this, but the bottom line is, guys, like, it's just got to happen. It's got to happen. All that's missing is the will. Once the will is there, and you can see this right now with Trump, once the will's there, things get done. So you are going to see by the end of the decade, I think every country in the West is going to have repatriation policies, and you're gonna see, I think, over half of all the migrants in the Western world go home. All over half of all the migrants in the Western world over the past 20 to 30 years are going to go home. I think that's what's going to happen. And I don't think it's going to matter whether they're citizens or whether they came illegally. I think you're going to start to see it across the board. You know, I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm going to tell you something else that's going to happen. Canada is going to become part of the United States. It's going to become part of the United States. I've seen this through my entire life. I didn't know how it was going to happen, but it's going to happen. I mean, Trump has already assumed the sale. I doubt it'll come in as one state. I think it'll come in as 7 because one state doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, in all honesty, what makes more sense is for states like Texas and California and even Florida and New York to split, just from a representation standpoint, rather than, you know, to just have Canada come in. Canada would be the biggest state in that sense, although it would be close in size to California. At least now, I mean, a lot of these migrants are going to go home, right? And a lot of them are in California and Texas. But geographically, like, you can't have one state that's half the size of the entire United States, which Canada would be if it joined the Union and it was one state. I think it's just a negotiating position. It's too complicated from a rhetorical standpoint to say Canada should come in as all this stuff. And also at this point in time, there's still too much liberal programming in Canada that we don't, I think it's more sellable from the American side to say, hey, well, we can afford to have one more liberal state, but we can't afford to have 7 or 10. But I think it's going to ultimately come in as 7. When you just look about geographically speaking, it makes sense for every province to come in as a state, except for the Maritimes and Newfoundland. I think that they should probably come in as one. And there's already been talk about that in the past, even in Canada, Maritime Union, Atlantic Union. So it's not like this is like a novel thing or is, undoable. It's not to say that those provinces would be too small as states. I mean, Newfoundland would be the smallest state, but it would still be close to Wyoming. PEI couldn't be a state. It's like 250,000 people, or not even that. I don't want to get too much in the weeds here, guys. But Canada's going to come into the United States. I think the only question is just whether it stops with Canada and Greenland or whether it continues beyond that. I personally wouldn't want it to continue beyond that. I think the geography makes it too difficult, and I'd like to have countries in Europe. I'd even like to see a European Union that has similar, like, constitution to the United States, but has their own thing going on. I want to see Europe sovereign and independent. And I actually think that a EU that isn't based on trying to oppress the European people would be a good thing. But I like the idea of these sort of geographic spheres of influence, and you know, I like the United States and Canada as one. I really I believe this. I've always believed this. I believe Canadians are Americans. They're just Americans who have been separated by the crown. And Uncle Guns, I agree. Greenland will happen before Canada, and that's going to be part of the impetus, right? Because Greenland's going to happen before Canada, and when Greenland happens before Canada, Canada's then completely surrounded. It's good to see a lot of Canadians among themselves having this discussion and realizing that it's absolutely for the best for them just to join the United States. We are meant to be one people. We are one people. We have one territory to defend. Like, let's just cut the shit. You guys will have your state sovereignty, like we all have state sovereignty. It doesn't mean that you lose your distinctiveness and your distinct history as Canadians. We're all under one banner, you know. I just don't. I don't. There's a, we talk about the sort of liberal psychological issues with the liberals, but the Canadians, there's no Canadian identity that isn't based on like anti-Americanism. And that's all Brit shit. The Declaration of Independence was the 13 colonies and Canada. Read the document. Canada was invited into the Declaration of Independence. And the only reason they didn't declare independence was because the French Canadians, very surprisingly, felt like because of concessions the Crown gave to them, that they would be more likely to preserve their Quebecois identity under Britain. But there's a reason that America sent troops up to Canada. There's a reason, because this was an expectation that they were going to join. I will always view them just as regionally different. Now, look, I only have one last thing to check. Okay, one last little thing to talk about before we close this out, because I got to close this out in the next 5 to 10 minutes, guys. Okay. So, and Uncle Guns, you very well could be right about that. That's a more esoteric thing, and we can talk about that on later COVID cabals. But is the pole shift a real thing? Are there deeper reasons that Trump wants Greenland and Canada beyond just sort of basic geopolitics? It's a good question, because we may need that territory for the American population. And yeah, they're huge rare earth metal deposits. I mean, Greenland and Canada have tons of natural resources. Where you have land, you have natural resources, right? Canada and Greenland both lack the population and the investment to deal with it. It just seems like a natural fit. It's a natural fit, guys. Come on, let's fucking do this. Come on, let's fucking do this, guys. Let's do this. Let's do it. Let's do this. Let's do this big thing right here. One nation. One nation under God, indivisible. But look, this whole stuff with Israel is the last stuff I'll talk about here, because I know it's on people's mind. Israel, Gaza. I personally do not see this working in the Zionist favor. I think when Trump mentioned that the U.S. was going to take control of Gaza, Netanyahu did not look like he expected that. It looked like an outmaneuvering. I'm seeing power plays, and even all this stuff about like sending Palestinians to Europe. I think he's really given them enough rope to hang themselves. That's what I personally think. Because, and like, I want to emphasize this. Like, I got tons of Jewish friends. I got Jewish clients. Individual Jewish people. I love you guys. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have hate in my heart, but there is this sort of Zionist agenda, and it's the Zionist agenda is also like it's an Anglo-Zionist agenda, right? I mean, it was the Anglo-American Israeli kind of triangle. So when we talk about this stuff, we're talking about freeing the Israeli people as much from this as much as anybody else. But I think that that was a big outmaneuvering, and I don't think that you're going to see like the Gaza Palestinians actually get settled in Europe. I actually think it's like it's another mask off moment. Like he's just giving them enough rope to hang themselves because it's out of congruence with literally every other thing that's going on. You know, I almost feel like Trump is doing like an agree and amplify kind of thing, to use a game expression. You know, it's like, yeah, we're totally your friend. Like, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this now. We're gonna do this. Yeah, why don't you do this? Like, he's like encouraging them to go too far, but also undermine them at the same time. So I think it's gonna be all right. I think it's gonna be all right. And I think, wow, like a lot of these Muslim nations are gonna want to get in on the Gaza development. If we don't have to pay anything, we don't have to send any troops there. Guys, let's just trust the plan, okay? Let's just trust the plan. Let's just trust the plan a little bit. All right. And Lincoln, just your last question here before we sign off. How do I see the JFK MLK class declass unfolding? I really think that this stuff is gonna. I think the D class in general is going to. It's not going to be as big as all the fraud, because the fraud is what's most to home. Like, I know on these COVID cabals we talked about, like, why am I paying taxes when I'm doing all this stuff? There's going to be a tax revolt. The way I'm actually seeing things right now with all the USAID stuff, there might be a tax revolt. The only difference, of course, is that I think the Trump administration is going to try to find some sort of, amenable. It's giving the Trump administration political capital to do the reforms they want to do, right? Because, yeah, the public doesn't want to pay taxes for all these scams. So the MLK, JFK D class stuff, I think it's gonna anchor in a lot of the deep state shenanigans. But the fraud, well, it's much more important to see what they were doing now, whether they've been, and then you can track it backwards. The problem with people is that even like 9/11, like it's too far back. You need to anchor it to something that just happened, things that have been ongoing. When you anchor it all to that, then it's all connected. But if you don't go through that process, I don't think it's going to have the same impact. So I guess that's the say. In the grand scheme of things, I think the JFK MLK stuff is not that big of a deal. Um, it's going to make an impact, but it's more like stacking on top of everything else. All right, guys. Well, look, it's good to be back. We are back more than ever before. And I think it's just a good example of the humility of waiting for God's plans to work out in the world rather than trying to force things to happen on your own timeline. Like, me and I think many of you, we thought that if we didn't have it happen in 2021, 2020, then it was over. And really the reality was that if it had happened, then we would be in a really rough situation. We hadn't given evil enough time to reveal itself. And I for one am very grateful that God is in control and not me, because I did not have the wisdom to see the bigger plan. And it's looking like it's all coming about and happening. So, all right, guys, I'll catch you next time. I don't know what next time's going to be, but I got to tell you this, that, I mean, even though it's kind of felt like Trump was president even before he became president, I can also tell you that I know you agree with me. These last 2.5 weeks have felt like an eternity. We haven't had energy like this since 2020 election. And we were doing a lot of COVID cabals then. So, I mean, maybe it'll be sooner than we think. maybe one next weekend. Um, we'll see what happens, guys. But at any rate, it's good to be back. I love you guys. It's good to like have the beast off of my back, so we can really just like speak freely and do our thing. So I love you all and have a great night.